One question that comes up all the time for new players is, what guitar should I buy? What's a good first guitar? What's a good guitar for beginners? What should I buy? Now, obviously, the answer to this question is really about finding that balance between something that's cheap and affordable enough, whatever your budget might be, cheap and affordable enough that you can comfortably pay for it, but it's still good, and something that's not so expensive that you've dumped all this money into it, and then a few weeks later on you decide that actually guitar's not for you. But what makes that balance harder to find is the fact that cheaper guitars are often cheap for a reason. So you can find yourself in a situation where you bought a cheap guitar, it's horrible to play, and that makes you want to give up. Now, that's not to suggest all cheap guitars are bad. They're not, and we live in a golden age for affordable guitars. That you can get guitars cheaper than you've ever been able to get them at a quality point that didn't used to be there. But that said, it's still the end of the market where if you're going to find bad guitars, they're probably going to be in that cheaper range. So this is something I think is quite ironic, I suppose, that we make beginners learn on the worst guitars. Now that's there's good reason for that. They're cheaper, and you can test the waters of guitar without spending thousands of dollars on it. But the challenge with it is those guitars are much more likely to fight back. So the problem with guitar, and if you've played it even once before, you'll know this to be true, it's a difficult instrument to learn. I say it fights back. You pick up the guitar and your fingers will hurt, your wrist will hurt. It might be that your shoulder going over the body of the guitar here hurts. You can get backache from leaning forward. You might find uncomfortable to play standing up if you're learning that way. It's just generally an instrument with a learning curve that goes beyond the actual playing and the music of it. It can be painful. Your fingertips. Everyone knows that feeling. If your skin peeling off and just being really sore, possibly even into the next day, it fights back. And I think that the cheapest guitars are more likely to fight back. So for beginners, it's not such an easy question of buy this guitar, because a lot of guitars can be made better, and it's even possible to find a guitar from a brand that has a good reputation, but maybe you just have the misfortune of finding one that's not so good from them. So the first thing you want to do when you're looking for a guitar, you have to decide your budget. Okay, if you can comfortably spend a few grand on a guitar and you wouldn't even know it, then of course you've got so many more options. And there's the benefit that guitars in that price range often hold their value reasonably well. Now, that's not to say you'll make money on it if you sold it, but you can get most of what you put into it a lot of the time. But most people aren't in that situation. Most people are looking to spend 3 figures, and sometimes that might be around £100 or dollars. Other people might be spending closer to £900 or dollars. Now, if you've got that kind of budget, there's the temptation to go to a shop and buy a new guitar, and you can do that. But generally speaking, I'm more of a fan of buying a used guitar, and the simple reason for that is the depreciation's already hit that guitar, and you can buy something better for less money. I did a review on this channel a little while ago of a Quart. It was a sort of a Les Paul shaped copy that they did, and that's a great guitar. And I think new they're around £500. And I bought that one from a local seller for £150. Everything works on it, the electronics work on it, the action's nice and low on it, it's comfortable to play. It could benefit from more work from a professional tech, but it doesn't need it. It's a very comfortable guitar to learn for a beginner. So if you buy used, you have so many more options to fit within your budget. Not everyone can go out and afford to buy something like an Epiphone or a made in Mexico Fender or one of Gretsch's made overseas guitars, because they're in the multiple hundreds. If you've only got 100 or 200 to spend, if you limit yourself to buying new, you really are looking at the worst of the worst. And a case in point for that, I had the experience of playing one of those guitars some years ago, and it cost about £90 with a small amp, and it came with a cable, and the guitar was really just a plank of wood. It refused to stay in tune. All the frets past the 12th fret were dead. It didn't stay in tune. It was uncomfortable, painful, but it just didn't work. You know, if the frets aren't working, that guitar's failing in its job. Now, you could put money into that guitar, replace the hardware, go and pay a tech, and they'd fix it, and it would almost certainly become functional, but that's going to cost you more than the value of the guitar in the first place. And by the time you've put that money into it, you could have just bought a better guitar, especially if you went second hand. So whether you buy new or used, there are some things you want to look for. Okay, first and foremost, you sit down with the guitar, whether you're in a shop or someone's house, it doesn't matter if it's new or not. There are some things you want to look for. First of all, do the frets all work? Now, to do that, it's boring, but you literally sit there and you do that on every string, on every fret. Are there any dead frets? Do any of them sound different? And you can also bend, but that's more going to be to do with the string height. So sometimes if it chokes out, it normally just means that string is catching the wood of the fretboard above it, but normally you can just raise the action a little bit. So the first question is, are there dead frets? Play every individual fret, make sure it produces a clear sound. The next thing to do is stay in tune. Now, this, it depends how long you've got the guitar. If you've got 5 minutes, it may not be long enough to go out of tune. If it does go out of tune in a short period of time, that's potentially a red flag. Now, a little caveat here, it's not always a red flag. If a guitar hasn't been strung properly or it's got old strings on it, it's much more likely to lose tune quickly. But it's also a good indication. If it's going out of tune all the time, like if you can strum through a few songs on it or just play through some chord changes, does it lose tune? Does it lose tune before and after you do the fret test that we just went through? That's a consideration. Okay, so you can change it sometimes by changing the strings, but sometimes you need to change the tuning pegs, completely swap them out for new ones. That's a cost. And sometimes you might want to change the bridge as well. Again, that's another cost. Something you may be able to do yourself. It may be something you want to pay someone else to do. The next thing you want to do is think about the neck. Is it straight? Is it warped? So simply hold it this way, so you're looking down the neck. Now, if you're not experienced with this, unless it's a very severe warp, you may not see it, but it's worth looking at. And it's simple question: does it look straight to you? If the answer is no, you probably want to walk away from that guitar. And then you want to look at the electrics and decide do they all work properly. So this is if you're buying an electric guitar, obviously. If it's an acoustic guitar, you can skip this step. But you want to plug it in, and then put your pickup selector in one of the top or bottom positions, and play. And then from there, you can just play one chord, and then turn the volume a bit down, not all the way down. Does it still work? Is the volume there throughout? Is it crackly? Does it cut in and out? Do the same for the tone. Does the tone do anything? And then if you've got another knob there, do the same thing. And just work through every pickup position, make sure it all works properly. If it doesn't all work properly, that's it's not a big problem. It's normally something that can just might be a quick soldering job. It might just need a bit of a clean out. It's not necessarily a problem, but you want to know where you're starting from. And again, that's more common on a used guitar, but it does happen on new guitars. When I went to buy a guitar last year, I was looking at Mexican Fenders, so guitars with a good name. normally good quality instruments, and one of them that I played, the bridge pickup kept cutting out. So I spoke to the store about it, and they were going to repair it if I bought it. I actually bought a different model that day, but don't assume that just because it's new it won't have any problems like that. Every now and then you'll find something that's unlikely, but it's happened. So those are the four main things you want to look for. Do the frets work? Are there any dead frets on there? Does it stay in tune? Is the neck straight or is it warped? And do the electronics all work properly? If you feel comfortable with the answer to all of those questions, then you're probably going to have a guitar that's reasonable to learn on. It doesn't really matter beyond that what you buy. You don't need to buy a Fender or a Gibson or a Gretsch or a high-end model or an expensive model. There's nothing wrong with buying brands that maybe have more of a reputation as being budget guitars, your Squiers, your Epiphones, vintage. You can get good guitars from most brands. Now, if possible, try and stay away from the guitars that cost 90, 100, 120 pounds brand new. Try and avoid those ones. If you have to buy one, try to bear in mind that it's going to need a setup. Now, if you know someone who can do that for you for free, great. If not, you're going to have to pay someone. It's not the most expensive thing in the world, but in relation to that, the cost of that guitar, it is quite expensive. So normally you want to budget, an hour or two of that tech's time. So think roughly between 50 and 100 pounds. Every tech might have their own price for doing a setup, and it depends what it needs. But it will transform that guitar. So my advice for buying a guitar, go out and play some, even if you only know one chord. If you don't know anything, take a player with you and have them play for you, and they can tell you, does it feel like it should? Does it play like it should? Is it comfortable? They can help you with that. If possible, try to buy used if budget's a real constraint for you, to the point that it rules out a lot of the new market. If you've got £300, £400, £500, you can buy a pretty good guitar new, but you can buy an even better one secondhand. And if possible, try to factor in a professional setup, because even on brand new guitars in a higher price range, they leave the factory. Sometimes they get shipped from a different country. They go through different temperature changes. They might have been sitting on the wall for a while. Again, temperature changes. Lots of people have been playing it. The string height can be different to what it should be. The truss rod might need adjusting. It's not that the guitar's bad or anyone's abused it. It's just simply that it's wood and things move, especially when they're in uncontrolled environments as far as temperature and humidity. So if you can set aside an extra little bit of money for a professional to do a setup on it, it will transform the guitar. Now, what do they do? So it depends what the guitar needs, but it can involve a fret dressing. So some guitars, especially cheaper ones, the frets at the top and the edge of the fretboard here can be a bit pokey, a bit spiky, so they can be filed down. It's also not uncommon for frets to be different heights. So you might find that this fret here is a different height to this fret here, and then that throws out some tuning and intonation. So they'll level all the frets, get everything nice and even and smooth, and that really helps with the playability. They'll also set the action, so the string height is nice and comfortable, and that can be tailored to your preferences if you have a preference already. If you don't, then they'll probably set it a little bit lower, a bit easier to play. They will also look at the truss rod and the neck relief. Now, if you're unfamiliar with that, basically there's a rod that runs through the neck, and as the guitar, basically the neck can kind of go up or down like this. So if it's bending in a little bit, and this is just normal wood movement from temperature changes or humidity changes, if it comes in a little bit, that gets closer to the strings, that lowers your action, and you'll find that the strings kind of deaden. But on the other hand, if it goes the other way, there's now extra gap there. So both of these things can affect your tuning, how comfortable it is to play, intonation. So they'll get that set for you. And then depending on what kind of bridge you've got, so this is a Fender Strat, so it's got a floating bridge. They can adjust that so it sits properly to the body. They can also adjust everything for your preference for string gauge. And then, you know, basically by the end of it, you have a guitar that feels and plays great, and very often feel like it's punching in a different cost bracket. So if you bought a guitar, you pay someone £50 to £100 to do a professional setup on it, that guitar is going to feel much more expensive. And that's really my main piece of advice is, if you're buying a guitar, set aside a little bit of money, have someone do a professional setup on it, and it will transform it. And if you can do that, it matters a lot less what you're buying. Because as a beginner, as a brand new player, your number one objective is having a guitar that is comfortable and enjoyable enough to play that you pursue it. You don't need to spend thousands on that. You don't need to spend 1,000 on that, and you don't need to spend many, many hundreds on that. But there is a low end of the market that your odds of having a good guitar are much smaller. So if you have a few £100s to shop in the used market, you're in good standing. And then it's down to preference. When you ask this question online, what guitar should I buy? What beginner guitar should I buy? You will have people basically give their preference. So if someone says, buy a telly, buy this, buy that, it's not really because any of those guitars are better objectively, it's because that's their preference. Okay, so me personally, I'm primarily a Les Paul player, so my standard recommendation is, you know, I recommend a Les Paul for these reasons. But there are other people who don't like a Les Paul for good reason. You know, every guitar has its imperfections. So the question is, what do you enjoy? Okay, now if you look at a Strat, or you look at a PRS, or you look at a Gretsch style, or you look at a Jackson, and you want a real metal looking guitar, or a BC Rich, someone saying buy a Les Paul, you know, you're not going to want that Les Paul. You're not going to see that guitar hanging on your wall and think, I want to play that. So for a new player, number one thing is, what guitar do you like the look of? What guitar will you see in your house every day and want to pick it up? That is the single most important question. Everything after that is just about detail and finding the right one. So don't be led into thinking you have to have a specific brand. You don't need to have a specific brand. You don't need to be at a specific price point. It doesn't need to be a specific color. It doesn't need to have a specific pickup configuration, single coils or humbuckers. You know, as I've said before, guitars are more similar than they are different. Now, of course, there are differences. This Strat is different from a Les Paul. But speaking to the beginner, those differences don't matter yet. You're not probably going to be spending great amounts of time getting into the nuances of different pickups, and really finding your tone. Your first part of your journey is learning chords, learning how to play the instrument, overcoming the physical challenges, getting through the pain, the building calluses on your fingertips, getting your wrists comfortable, your forearm comfortable, because all these things will ache and hurt. So you want a comfortable guitar. And on that point, how does the neck feel in your hands? You know, some necks are very thin, some are baseball bat necks. You need to find one that's comfortable to you. Those are the most important things. And how does it sit? This is a light guitar, so it sits pretty well. I have to hold it, but it's not uncomfortable to play. Some guitars, some people feel like they're uncomfortable. Yeah, the flying V shape is notorious for this, because it's an angled straight edge. There's nowhere really for it to sit, so you have to consciously hold that guitar. So you want to go to a shop and play as many as you can. What do you like the look of? Find the one that you want, as in find the model that you want. Then you can go shopping for the one you can afford of that model. And if you can find an extra £50 to £100 to put aside to pay for a setup on it, that's it. That's all you need to do. And anything can be upgraded along the way. If you fall in love with that guitar, but you think actually, you know, in a year when you're more proficient on it and you start to see the problems with it, you can upgrade it. Okay, if it generally holds tune but every now and then it slips, you can upgrade the tuners on it. You can upgrade the pickups if you want a different sound from it. You can upgrade the wiring harness. You can fix any little snags with it. But you want good bones. You want a guitar that you're comfortable with, that feels good in your hands, that you enjoy looking at and playing and makes you want to get better. So that's it. That's my advice. I hope this has been helpful. And again, the most important thing here is don't mistake other people's recommendations as anything other than their preference. Okay, because really what you're looking for are a set of principles. To find a guitar that you like is about you know, a checklist, if you like. And it comes down to what you like, what you're looking for, and how to tell if it's generally a good guitar. Anyone who tells you to buy this specific brand or this specific model, they're just telling you their preference. And this is a personal journey. The guitar is about what you like. Okay, we don't all play the same thing. So I'll wrap this up here. Again, hope it's been useful, and I hope this helps you go and find the guitar that is going to keep you addicted to it for 12 hours a day.